Hi, it's Mike Reese. I've been writing for The Simpsons for 30 years. I ran the show in seasons 3 and 4. I created The Critic. And now I've written a book. It's called Springfield Confidential, and it is the first insider's look at The Simpsons. It's filled with secrets, scandals, and tales of censorship and celebrities. It's a great book. It's like a Simpsons episode. It's fast, it's smart, and it's packed with hundreds of jokes, some of them funny. Please buy Springfield Confidential. You can order it now on Amazon.com.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we are continuing our conversation we started last week with Sean from the Writer's Bone podcast discussing the excellent episode Burns Heir. Joining me, of course, on this podcast is your co-host with the most, Richie theWizKid, and as I mentioned, Sean from the Writer's Bone podcast. We are going to dive right back into our conversation where we left off at the end of Act 1, about to dive into Act 2. But before we do that, just a very quick reminder that we are smack dab in the middle of our worst contest ever. We are going to be giving away 5 early release copies of Mike Reese's new book, Springfield Confidential, Jokes, Secrets, and Outright Lies from a Lifetime Writing for The Simpsons. And to enter, all you have to do is use the hashtag worst contest ever anywhere on social media. So hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It doesn't matter. Just hashtag worst contest ever. And you will be entered to win one of 5 copies of that book. So use that hashtag as much as you can, and we will get you entered in the competition. For now, we are going to go ahead and dive right back into Burns Heir. When we get back from break, we see that Mr. Burns has once again found his way to the Simpsons' home, and this time he's got paperwork saying that once this is signed, Bart would be the rightful heir to all of his fortune.
Woohoo! We're rich! Bart, get over to the mansion and open up all the windows. We want to get the old people smell out before we move in.
Lisa has to remind her father that Mr. Burns is still alive and therefore still his house, at least for the time being. And another contender for greatest joke here, because Homer decides that he is going to see how Mr. Burns' heart is doing by startling him suddenly with a boo! And in the background, we see Abe grabbing his chest and collapsing, clearly having a heart attack. But again, he just calls back from the floor, "I'm okay."
It still baffles me that with the limited interaction Burns and Abe have had over the first 5 seasons, they don't recognize each other from the Hellfish.
Yeah, at one point when they go like, "Didn't we serve in the army? Didn't we see the horrors of war together?
Didn't we steal a bunch of art from each other?"
The other thing I wanted to bring up in this scene is, once Homer signs the sheet, doesn't that mean that Bart still to this day would still be the heir to Burns' money? I mean, I know he's got great lawyers and everything, but he has great lawyers, so I figured the paperwork wouldn't have any loopholes in it.
Well, it'd only have loopholes that benefited him. He probably has the ability to cancel at any time.
I don't know. I think I need to see a copy of that paperwork. I'm going to get Lionel Hutz on the job. Why do we keep using him?
He's argued in front of many judges, sometimes as a lawyer.
Often as a lawyer.
The Orange Julius joke is we'll get to it.
We will get there, but for now we just
Foreshadowing.
See Burns leaves the Simpsons home and he's clearly lonely. I mean, he's doing this for a reason. And Marge identifies that Burns is sad and leaving by himself. So he urges Bart to go and spend some time with Mr. Burns.
Well, I like the bit right before that where Marge says, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" to Homer, and he's like, "Yeah, let's push him down the steps."
Where Homer's just like, at that moment, he kind of says it softly and tenderly because he's hoping that his wife of many years is on the same wavelength of like, yeah, let's murder an old man.
Yeah, they're definitely ride or die. I also really love Homer's reaction, too. After Marge urges Bart to go spend time with Mr. Burns, Homer's like, aw, how come Bart gets to go and do that, and I can't spend one night lurking at the bushes outside Chef Boyardee's house?
It's a great...
I like that he actually lives in Springfield.
He's close enough, yeah. He has a summer house in Springfield where he hangs out, but he has gates up now because Homer kept trying to break in. What is he doing lurking outside his house? Like, that's my question is, like, is he just watching him because he's like, oh, it's a celebrity? Or is he like, I can murder this man and eat his food?
I think it's about the food and the celebrity. It's a combination of the two. I mean, it's not going to be the last time Homer lurks outside of celebrities' houses.
True. Chef Boyardee is Homer's Anthony Bourdain, celebrity chef.
Oh,
no.
Speaking of eating things, we see Mr. Burns talking to Bart, and he realizes the children see him as some sort of booger man, but he's not really that bad of a dude. He then sees that Bart's milk has gone cold, so he rings a bell to have the servants take care of that.
except that they lock Bart into the seat.
Oh yeah, they hit the wrong button, and it actually straps Bart down. Very James Bond-ish in a lot of ways, or evil villain-ish, we'll just say, because yeah, he's completely linked down to the chair by metal bars.
And across the mouth, which is, I think that's the part that makes it, is that they lock him at the wrists and ankles, but then it comes right across his mouth and stops, and you can see Bart struggling with fear.
Well, and Burns is just so casual, and he's like, oh, wrong button. When Bart declares he thinks he wants to go home, though, Burns tells him that, here, you can have anything you want to eat. Even some sort of gelatin dish. It's made from hooves,
Fun fact.
But Bart doesn't want gelatin. He wants a pizza. And he wants that pizza delivered by Krusty the Clown. Hey! Where's my $400?
It only costs $400 for Krusty. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm thinking about the time. I'm like, only $400. I know he's a minor celebrity, but I figure it'd be more.
He clearly is, like, low on drug money and just desperate for a quick-paying gig at this point. Because, yeah, I think Krusty the Clown, arguably the most A-list celebrity in Springfield, at least, is going to be able to at least demand a four-figure sum, I would think, for an appearance fee.
This is the first time that we've ever seen Uber Eats in pop culture.
Simpsons did it. Hey, here's your pizza, $400.
Please make sure to rate me on the app.
I love that Bart actually asked Krusty, like, hey, you're live on TV right now. How can you also be here at the same time? And Krusty just tells him, it's fine. I just put on an old rerun. No one will ever know the difference.
No one will notice.
But then we see on the TV that Krusty just happened to pick the episode from the day that the Falkland Islands were invaded. So this was something that happened in 1982. It was between Argentina and somebody. I don't know. It was in South America. It was a big deal. The whole idea here is that the news was announced the day of in 1982 when the Falkland Islands were invaded by Argentine forces. And Krusty, out of all the days he could have picked this one where there was a special announcement.
It was the United Kingdom. It was, as Ricky Gervais says, the Falkland War was the equivalent of a giant holding a midget at bay with one hand.
Well, there you go. Again, like I said, we bring smarter people on the show than ourselves to carry us through these times. So thank you for that.
And did you notice one other thing about that sequence, Miles?
That Krusty has maps prepared to teach children about this war that's happening at this random time?
Well, that he can actually read the cue card he's handed while he's on live television.
Oh,
he actually reads it.
Wow, nice.
Which we all know Krusty's illiterate, so how was he able to read the cue card?
Ah, very true. Maybe just a picture was drawn. And they told him beforehand, like, hey, this might happen.
Me no money, card no read good.
So through this, Bart does decide that maybe he'll stick around at Burns' house a little longer after all. I mean, the pizza delivered by Krusty's pretty dope. What else does he have? And it turns out he has a room full of televisions that are actually all watching what the Springfield residents are doing. And there's a wonderfully dark little joke here where Mr. Burns basically says that when he's talking about watching everybody in Springfield with monitors, he says, "I got the idea from the movie Sliver. What a delightful little romp." The movie Sliver came out in 1993. It's about, essentially it's a serial killer that operates a apartment complex and essentially watches people in the same manner. So the fact that Burns can view this... Vacancy? Yeah, the fact that Burns sees this as a delightful romp is very telling about his character.
Hey, Batman does it too, so it's okay.
True. I mean, so in this case, in the movie Sliver, Mr. Burns is rooting for Billy Baldwin, who is the guy watching all of those cameras. And
right, he sees that as the hero's tale.
And Bart is Sharon Stone.
It's like the movie The Karate Kid. The main character should be the Karate Kid, not that jerk from New Jersey.
Daniel LaRusso didn't even know karate.
I hear he gets like a bunch of shit for that still. A little side tangent. Like I hear he still gets like made fun of. Like people years later still come after him about that. They're like, "You're such a dick." And he's like, "It's a movie character."
Hey, that movie is a classic.
I love all of those movies. I even like the terrible sequels. And I don't mean the second one because that movie's fucking awesome. I mean the terrible sequels that followed it.
Oh, with Boys Don't Cry.
Hilary Swank.
Yes.
The next Karate Kid, which won me $20 one time because somebody said I made that movie up.
Who are you arguing with?
You challenged me on a Karate Kid topic? No, you don't do that to me when we're drinking lovely iced tea.
Why are you covering that? You're 32.
Sir, I understand, but do you want to finish your order here at Burger King?
I'll have it my way, sir.
Little side note, Dan and I once kind of aggravated the writer of Karate Kid, Robert Kamen. He was supposed to be a guest on the show, and through mixed wires, he called us, and we weren't prepared for him at all. I think we were at the airport waiting for somebody, and he was not pleased with us.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so little side note there.
Fun story from the Writer's Bone podcast.
We just got a little David Merkin all of a sudden again.
Back with The Simpsons, we see Bart and Mr. Burns looking on through the townspeople. There's a quick reference to Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro here, which is actually Moe looking in the mirror saying, "Are you talking to me? No one else, so you must be talking to me." We also see that Homer is sneaking into the bathroom with a vase full of flowers for a little secret snacking that he apparently likes to do.
So that explains his mysterious trip to Holland.
Another great sidebar to Bart, just like the fire line, just like, just the realization, like, oh, I get it.
What a weird thing that, like, this is such an odd choice. Even in the director's commentary, they were laughing at, like, the absurdity of this joke, like 20 years removed from, or 10 years removed from writing it. But just a very peculiar choice to have Homer eating flowers as his, like, secret shame.
And it's, again, like a movie reference. It's from The Last Emperor, I think it's the film. Like, one of his concubines, like, eats a flower. Again, like a deep dive, a joke that no one would get, but they layer it and make it so good.
Wow.
But Sean got it.
I got it because I wasn't getting laid in high school. There you go, kids.
That's the secret.
Ooh la la, someone's going to get laid in college.
It was a lot of me. Just a...
So, Burns' home has a lot of great things that Bart is sharing with his family. He talks about how great of a time it was. His house has a hedge maze, a moat, bleached hardwood floors, and a bottomless pit.
It couldn't possibly be bottomless.
Well, for all intents and purposes. We also see, though, that Bart is no longer happy with the meals that are prepared at home. In fact, he declares yuck meatloaf, which is blasphemous in Homer's presence. And he actually takes the side piece and scrapes it off for the dog, to which Homer is not happy about.
That was the end piece. That's it. being abusive to your family is one thing, but I will not stand idly by and watch you feed a hungry dog. Go to your room.
No, this family stinks. Mr. Burns nurtures my destructive side. I'm suffocating here.
Bart, you listen.
Oh, go eat some flowers.
My secret shame.
The secret shame. Homer puts his hand to his mouth to say it. Just, my secret shame.
Oh my goodness, such a bizarre joke, like I said, but really funny. This whole sequence is fantastic. And it, of course, ends with Bart getting angry, and he rides off in the night on his bike. We assume he's heading towards Mr. Burns' house. And Burns couldn't be happier about this. He's clearly been watching on those monitors of his, and he declares to Smithers that plan worked perfectly.
Smithers, my plan worked perfectly. Bart Simpson will live here as my son, and I will mold him in my own graven image. Who knows? I may even grow to love him.
We see Bart run in and actually give Mr. Burns a hug, and Mr. Burns' reaction is priceless.
Bartholomew! Ooh, Smithers, get it off me!
Clearly he's not used to being hugged.
In a loving way. He's not used to human touch.
Right, exactly. Homer is not just going to let his son go peacefully into the night, however. He actually chases him down and shows up at Burns' manor and says, Bart, you're coming home with me. But Bart, of course, isn't having that. He wants to stay with Mr. Burns, and Mr. Burns suggests to Homer that he should probably get off his property.
Or what? You'll release the dogs or the bees? Or the dogs with bees in their mouths, and when they bark, they shoot bees at you? Well, go ahead. Do your worst.
And instead of doing all of that, Burns just slams the door and locks it.
He locked the door. I'll show him. Ding dong.
And for whatever reason, Homer decides payback would be best served by Ding Dong Ditch in this moment. But while Burns' reaction was to just slam the door and lock it, that was not what was originally written for this episode. The original gag is something that we do see later in the 138th episode Spectacular, but this was actually the moment that the Robo Richard Simmons was created. This was where Mr. Burns was going to say, I have something much worse than dogs or robotic dogs that shoot bees out of their mouths or whatever it was. And he would actually release the robotic Richard Simmons at this time. And the sequence actually made it all the way through the color sequence. That's actually why it was included in the 138th podcast. That's actually why it was included in the 138th episode Spectacular. It's because they already had it animated. They had already gone all the way through with this entire sequence through the animation side of things and decided they may as well use it because they still thought it was kind of funny. But two things happened that caused them not to use it at this time. The first one was simply just that it kept failing during the screenings. Like when they'd show it, it just wasn't really getting the laughs that they expected. So they decided to cut it short instead. The other reason that they eventually got around by having Dan do the voice for it. But at the time, Richard Simmons has actually expressed interest in doing The Simpsons. He said that he wanted to be on the show. The Simpsons writers were, as usual, ecstatic. They were excited to make the part for him. They got everything written out. And when they presented the idea, Richard Simmons turned it down. He said that he wasn't really comfortable with the idea of being made into a robot.
That's kind of weird.
It is, especially because it's the funniest joke in the whole episode. It's kind of taken a life of its own, kind of like the Nicolas Cage, The Bees Are in My Eyes from Wicker Man, which isn't even in the film. It's like a cut scene. But like this is the scene, the robot Richard Simmons as he comes out playing Casey the Sunshine Band, and then comes on a life of its own, and then Smithers has to very T2 use a shotgun to shoot it, and then it grows back like the T-1000. It's that great moment. It's taken on a life. It's hysterical. It's a shame they cut it because I think it would have matched so well with the tone of the episode.
It really is a very funny scene, and it's weird to me that it was failing during the screenings for the staff. Like, that was, again, essentially the main reason, is they could have somebody else do the voice, as they clearly did later. So that was the real reason they pulled it, was the fact that it wasn't getting the laughs they expected. And I agree, it would have been the funniest sequence in the entire episode had they kept it.
Well, it's one of those things, too, where, like, after seeing the 138th special, you always think when you see this episode it's actually going to be there, and then when he just shuts the door, you're like, wait, I thought there was a scene here, and then you're like, oh, wait, nope, that's in the other clip show. But they must have been not refraining from tasting the knob when they were going through the test screenings of the episode.
But yeah, also just really weird that Richard Simmons would turn him down after he was the one that contacted them expressing interest of being on the show. And just his reasoning of not being comfortable with being made into a robot, I find very, very strange.
Maybe he has a fear of robots.
True. And to be fair, Richard Simmons is a bit of a strange dude, it would seem, anyway. So who knows?
Possibly. I can see Richard Simmons like, I'm way too busy with jazzercise for this.
Maybe they animated him a little chunkier than he liked, and he was offended by that.
Maybe they got insider information, and he actually is a T-1000, and he didn't want people to start drawing conclusions.
Oh, nice.
Maybe he's the assassin going after the Estonian. Oh,
and that's why he goes into hiding. I like this.
But for now, Marge and Homer are very concerned that their son is more or less being held captive, from their perspective at least. They call the cops and let them know that they're upset. But of course, we get a great line from Wiggum. Oh, for gosh, can't you people just solve these problems yourselves? I mean, we can't be policing the whole city.
Another lazy moment. I love the Wiggum moments they put in there to show that he really hates being a cop.
Yeah. This is very similar to a sequence we got last week as well. Same concept where he was taking calls and just, it was with Stampy the elephant. And he's just like, oh, sure, yeah, you've also been attacked by an elephant. Just like the last 20 guys who called me or whatever it was. Yeah. So, fed up with not being able to take action themselves, not being able to get the police to help them, they go and see Lionel Hutz, who sometimes acts as a law-talking guy.
Well, you good folks can rest easy now, because you've come to the very best in legal representation.
Excuse me, is there an Orange Julius stand on this floor?
I'll sell you this one. It's almost full.
Well, why don't I just drink out of a toilet bowl?
He'll be back. And as for your case, don't you worry. I've argued in front of every judge in the state. Often as a lawyer.
The torrid history of Lionel Hutz could make a whole John Grisham novel, because you just want to know more about what's going on in that, because he has an office in the mall and he's also a shoemaker. That's to say, he's also a lawyer and a shoe repair.
Well, he's struggling with that particular shoe. He bitches about, he's like, oh, I hate these damn whatever the name of the brand was. So he's clearly had experience in that field for a while.
Did you guys notice what the ice cream parlor next door was named?
No.
The crematorium.
Well, and Marge once again asked the obvious question of, why do we keep hiring him? And that's, to be fair, a very good question, because he doesn't usually do too well for the Simpsons clan.
Yeah, he's probably close to free, though.
That's true. He's not charging a lot. I wonder what he charges more for, fixing your shoe or trying your case.
I feel like the shoe.
He's got a suitcase full of nothing.
He is.
Doesn't he have a drawer full of smoking monkeys, though?
That is true.
He is also a pretty good babysitter. I mean, he wasn't the worst.
Yeah, that bar's not too high.
And he lowered his rates considerably, I do recall. But for why they hire him and if he'll actually help, we will have to find out on the other end of this break, because that brings us to the end of our second act, and we're going to go ahead and take another quick break, but we'll be right back for the conclusion of Burns' Heir.
Hey everybody, we are the Derailers, Goobs, Ripken, and Jenny Bean, and you can join us once every week for a brand new derailment. It includes sidetracking, randomness, we just can't stay on topic.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Derailers.
And please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and also on YouTube.
Derailers! Hi, I'm MrMostDaysOff. You might remember me from such podcasts as the I Love Lisa review, and so it's come to this, a Simpsons clip show. I brought a friend along with me today to talk to you about an exciting new product.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Richie the WizKid.
Miles, did you know that most people have no idea how to get a Best Darn Diddly t-shirt?
You can get a t-shirt with a podcast logo on it? I had no idea.
If you go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly, you'll find not only shirts, but also Best Darn Diddly hoodies, posters, mugs, and even phone and laptop cases. And that's good news for everybody.
That is good news for everybody.
And did you know the Best Darn Diddly products are also inflammable?
Richie, that means they catch on fire.
I had no idea.
Help support the Best Darn Diddly Review Show by buying our stuff at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. And do try to stay away from open flames.
Bye, everybody.
We come back from the start of our third act and see Bart in his new room in the Burns Manor. It's giant and it's filled with toys. He has Milhouse over and he's kind of showing him around. A train actually comes through the room, like an actual miniature train on tracks, just choo-choos right on through. Milhouse asks, hey, where does that thing go? Bart doesn't really know, but he does know it won't be back for another 3 hours and 45 minutes. And once it had snow on it.
Ooh. Snowpiercer.
Oh, wow, like mini Snowpiercer. That's an interesting idea. Have you seen that movie, Sean?
I was about to say, yeah, that's actually what the movie is. They're connected. It's just a mini version of what's going on in the Simpsons world. That's where Chris Evans and Ed Harris have their conversation. It's all within the Simpsons realm.
It's like they get Ant-Man down into the train.
Yes.
Well, and this is really all just an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and it's being told as a story, so it's really layered.
I'm confused.
Which Richie told me before we got on the air that's being made into an actual movie.
Ant-Man or
Are you afraid? Are you afraid of the dark? Yeah, Ant-Man. That might go places. I saw a little video on Facebook right before we got on to record. One of those videos that sometimes gives you actual news, saying that they are turning "Are You Afraid of the Dark" into a movie, and it's supposed to be the screenwriter from It is going to be writing it.
Oh,
whoa! You didn't tell me that part.
I'm in. I'd watch that. I was a fan of it, and you know, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Still terrifying. Still some really good episodes.
That's one of the parts the video brought up. They're like, each episode was actually quite terrifying.
The final episode, if I remember, had to do with a hospital and a vampire, and he's slowly taking off the night crew one by one. It's awesome.
Yeah, that is. I didn't realize that was the last episode in the series, but that's a really awesome episode.
Great show. We now can do a pod.
Man, somebody should do a podcast about that.
Do we have any other tangents we can go on in this episode? I think we covered all bases.
I'm sure we'll find
all corners of the world in pop culture.
For now, though, Milhouse actually has to leave, but Bart, you can tell, desperately wants him to stay. He actually starts to try to bribe him with clothing. And it's actually by a famous designer. It's somebody who used to do clothes for Joan Rivers and some other celebrities that would walk the red carpet. It was Bob Mackie. And the funny part is Milhouse actually realizes and knows who that is. Oh, it's a Bob Mackie. But he still isn't convinced, and he actually does have to go.
I mean, he was trying on women's clothes earlier in the episode.
Good point. He's in touch with the style.
Good callback.
As was the style at the time.
When Bart is visibly upset by Milhouse having to leave, Burns tries to console him by letting him know that he doesn't need them. He has everything that he could possibly want here. And Mr. Burns can act as one of his schoolyard chums.
Be your schoolyard chum? This was actually the part that completely caught me off guard, and I feel like it's for the wrong reasons, but I just laughed my ass off at the sound in this next scene.
Well, Mr. Burns is in 1920s era football gear with the leather helmet and all that good stuff, and he's set to kick off to Bart. He's got Smithers holding the ball for him, but on his run up to the ball, he actually gets winded, and he ends up kicking Smithers in the face as he falls over.
It's just, the sound of the kick was so damn funny, and then seeing Smithers' face when he collapses on him, for some reason, I guess it's just like a football in the groin moment where I just wasn't remembering that this happened, and the whole 2 seconds of it just made me laugh my ass off. I felt like a child again.
It is a great moment where they collapse on top of each other, and you're out cold, and Bart's just watching from afar.
Well, I think Smithers' tongue was kind of hanging off his
Smithers
mouth
is having a good day.
Like, ooh. With the whole sound of the kick, though, like, whack. It's getting me now. Some great animation there.
So clearly Mr. Burns isn't cut out to be one of Bart's schoolyard chums, but he still has a shit ton of money, so he just buys Bart a really expensive, fancy sports car. Even though Bart can't drive, that doesn't really matter.
Pish posh, there's jaws of life in the trunk.
It'll be fine. You've got the jaws of life if you need them.
Yeah. Brand new Ferrari, and he's just like, nah, jaws of life. The kid will use it.
This is actually a lot of fun animation here, too, because you get the perspective of Bart, who can't actually see over the dashboard, clearly driving at top speed, just running things over left and right, including the surprisingly popular side character of the Estonian dwarf, who not only gets hit on the windshield, but towards the end of the sequence, when Bart finally comes to a stop, pops up and somehow managed to land in the back seat.
You're telling me. It is a great moment of that. One, he didn't kill anybody, but just going through there, I do love at the end. I don't know why this made me laugh the first time I watched it, but as he's driving through the Christmas Wonderland, at the end he hits a menorah. I don't know why it made me laugh. I'm like, oh, that's nice. They included the Jewish faith too. They want everyone.
They're inclusive, yeah. It's like anytime they do that type of thing and they have like the small room at the end for like others, basically, as they put it. And then we get to the sequence that we talked about a little bit earlier. We see Homer and Marge, who are basically running out of options at this point, so they decide to try something a little extreme. They hire a deprogrammer who basically convinces them that Mr. Burns has their son brainwashed, and he needs to get back and undo that brainwashing. So we get sequences of Homer and Marge impatiently walking back and forth, pacing as they're waiting on their son for weeks to go through this deprogramming process.
There's a couple of good little bits there, though, with the deprogrammer. He's like, I'm the one who successfully deprogrammed Jane Fonda. And when they said, what about Peter Fonda? And he goes, oh, that was a heartbreaker. But I did get Paul McCartney out of Wings.
You idiot! He was the best one!
Or the great... Homer always has these things where there's a great one where in a later season where someone mentions that they're the one who gave the Cosby Mysteries a bad review, and Homer goes, "You ruined it! There are so many great mysteries he could have solved on that show."
Zoinks!
I also actually like it when they're actually inside of the hotel. The programmer is saying, what you're doing is wrong. And he's trying to convince Bart to not love Mr. Burns anymore. But all they hear next door in Mayor Quimby's room with a woman that isn't his wife in bed is, what you're doing is wrong. Wrong.
You're killing the romance in here.
Do you mind?
And after what is a grueling 2 weeks, the Simpsons have their son back. And that's when we see Hans Moleman walk out with Bart's signature clothing
Looking not
on.
yellow.
Looking not yellow, that's true. And he actually says, Mom, Dad, I missed you.
Oh, mwah, mwah.
Marge, of course, smarter than Homer, instantly realizes and tells Homer, that's not our son, Homer. That's Hans Moleman.
Can I keep him anyway? Huh?
Which, we'll see later, Homer becomes quite attached to Bart B, I guess we'll call him.
Bart B.
Back to Burns' mansion, we see Bart and Burns are bonding to some extent. They're watching an episode of Itchy and Scratchy called The Buck Chops Here. Again, it's always amazing how the Itchy and Scratchy cartoons seem to be so in tune with what's happening in the Simpsons' personal lives.
It is
crazy how that happens.
Well, it's also great that I always thought it's amazing that the writers were able to come up with a separate TV show that was, they actually had Itchy and Scratchy episodes. So they were sitting around like, all right, what are we going to do this time? Money episode.
Yeah, and this is actually a pretty clever thing they do. I mean, they actually have Itchy cut up Scratchy into $20 bills or whatever the denomination is, into United States money.
I mean, you got to do something with those monkey corpses, right?
Well, and then to like put the icing on top, or whatever, the final blow, they actually take that money to like a high society meeting where everybody there is a very wealthy dog, using Scratchy's remains as money to light their own cigars. And we get this beautiful shot at the end sequence where it zooms into the eye on top of the pyramid, and it's clearly Scratchy's eye, and he actually starts to scream in terror as the flames engulf him. God damn, that's dark, but like so funny.
Don't ask how the dollar bill can scream, but it did.
It totally did.
Well, going back to Dark and actually back to the motel episode, as the reprogrammer is driving up to the motel, the sign on the motel says, now without corpses under the bed.
I think it's in the crawl spaces, but yeah, there's no more corpses in the hotel.
Which is that's what made me think like, oh, there must be a serial killer running around Springfield.
Well, that's just where the Springfield mob goes to. The Gentleman's Club has a lot of events out there.
Oh,
the legitimate business owners club, the legitimate businessmen's club. That's what it is. Yeah.
And it's just like Godfather 2, just like holding a shivering senator. It's okay. This girl didn't have a family. We can make her disappear.
Well, this cartoon is quite funny, and Bart gets a laugh, as does Mr. Burns, but when Bart's laugh comes to an end, Burns just keeps going and going and going, and it's like he's never experienced television before. He even said, "Is all TV this wonderful?"
I actually enjoy that little moment. I don't know what Bart has. Why is there a problem here? He's enjoying everything you enjoy.
Yeah. As a child.
That's true. No, you're totally not wrong, but you can clearly see it does make Bart uncomfortable for whatever reason. I'm kind of with you. I mean, to some extent, it's like, cool, he likes the things I like, but at the same time, it seems like Burns was really, really laughing a lot when it came to like torturing that cat. So I guess
it's
maybe
more that
there's
the high end society part of it, where like they were so rich and didn't give two shits about burning money. Like I think that's more of what played into it.
Fair enough. Either way, there is something that kind of alerted Bart a lot, that he was clearly taken off his game, and even says to Burns, I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I think I'd like to go home for a little while.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to tell you this, but I'm afraid your family doesn't want you back.
We see Burns turns on a television monitor, and in black and white we can see Homer, Marge, Lisa, and Maggie sitting on the couch. Only there's something a little bit off about this, because Homer speaks first, and he says, "I do not miss Bart at all."
I am glad he's gone.
Lisa even says, "As am I." But the best is Homer drops his sandwich and declares,
"Bo!" Because Michael Caine, I think, was trying to say, oh, Homer must be very agitated. Sorry, I don't know. All right, well, damn it.
Bart's reaction to this is he can tell something's wrong. He says it's probably just his imagination, but there's something about this that just doesn't seem quite right.
Really? Excuse me for just a moment.
And then we see him walk into the set of this scene with, again, fake Homer, Marge, Lisa, and Maggie. And the actors actually pull their masks off to talk about their issues with these characters.
People, that was all wrong. Homer Simpson doesn't say Bo, he says...
He has to check the scripts.
Go! Which can I say that Mr. Burns in this instance remembers who Homer is. It's really odd because he always forgets Homer all the time, but since he's directly involved with something in this episode, he has to remember him for a little while. But I always find it odd how they flick that switch on and off all the time.
It's a strange choice the way they do that with him. Just, again, more often than not, he's completely oblivious to who they are, even though he's now been to their house at least 4 or 5 times.
I think it's more like 8 or 9 at this point.
It very well could be.
And giving them gifts.
Yeah. Including a giant Olmec head that's still in the Simpsons basement as recently as last episode.
Excellent.
When we see the actor playing Homer pull off his mask, like we mentioned, it actually does look like Michael Caine. And we talked about the episode with Apu, Homer and Apu, a few episodes back, where they originally wanted Michael Caine to do the James Woods role. They weren't able to get him, but they're actually big fans, so they wanted to include him anyway. So they didn't get him to do this part, but they did draw the character very much to resemble, and they were very much trying to pay homage to Michael Caine in this sequence. Sorry, MB, but I'm having trouble with this character. Is he supposed to have some kind of neurological impairment like Rain Man or Awakenings? I mean, what the hell am I doing here?
And this dialogue has none of the wit and sparkle of Murphy Brown.
And then we see the actor that was playing Lisa is once again the Estonian dwarf, and he says, "Hey, you know we are getting into golden time."
Yes, well, just get it right or you'll be doing Come Blow Your Horn at the Westport Dinner Theater.
He goes back into the control room and tells Bart that, let's see what they're doing this time. And then we see the much improved over Bo.
Still ruined it. Got it.
That's what we're all about.
We ruined everything.
Sean, it sounded like you had something to comment on the Westport Dinner Theater.
Oh, it was the fact that Burns has a full TV studio in his house. That not only does he have a full auditorium set up with a device that kicks people, but he also has a full-size TV studio as well. Just love that little thing where he's like, hold on, opens the door and walks over.
You know, I didn't even think about the fact that all of that is in his mansion. You're absolutely right. His place is ridiculous.
You got to put something in those rooms.
Yeah, true.
That's true.
Room full of monkeys writing.
Eventually they'll come up with Shakespeare.
I even love, though, at the end of all that, even with as bad as that is, with the Bart's like, yep, that's them all right.
Which, to be fair, I think the real issue here is obviously Bart misses his family, but you know, we were talking about Mr. Burns laughing at Itchy and Scratchy earlier. Bart usually does that with Lisa, and I think that's the part that bothers Bart. That he's not doing it in this familiar settings with the people he actually loves, knowing that they both love doing that together. And I think that's the point of this whole scene. It's just my takeaway from it.
Agreed. Yeah, because he's realizing like this is a moment that I should be sharing with my family, not this creepy old man in a mansion.
Yeah, who's laughing at the butchering of a cat.
And the creep factor definitely plays more and more into it. Absolutely. Especially with the final confrontation that he puts Bart into, which, I mean, it's a great ending for this episode, but super fucked up if you actually think about that in a real life setting.
Yeah.
Is that the right letter?
Exactly, yes. For now, though, they're trying to fill the void at the Simpsons home of what Bart usually brings to the table. Lisa's just ripping random stuff, like, for instance, she's tearing the wallpaper off the wall and tripping her father. She's trying to fill that void of random, meaningless destruction with Bart's absence that has been left with them. I also really love when she does trip Homer. I'm pretty sure Homer dies right there, because he just goes completely limp and doesn't move at all.
Well, he has a super thick skull, so more likely he just got knocked out for a little bit.
He definitely
or
goes
the next
unconscious,
Homer comes
though.
and takes his place.
Yeah, that's true. Back with Bart, we see he's being fit with clothing to look more like his quote-unquote father. He's put into a suit just like Mr. Burns's, but he complains that it's a little bit too tight.
Yes, that's to correct your posture. Soon you'll have a mighty hump. Now, you really are my son. This calls for a celebration. Let's fire some employees.
And we get a Bart actually taking on the catchphrase, excellent. We're back at the nuclear power plant where Burns has some employees lined up to come and visit for their firing. First up, they call in Lenny, and Mr. Burns actually tells him, if you can tell me why I shouldn't fire you without using the letter E, you can keep your job.
Okay, let's make this sporting, Leonard. If you can tell me why I shouldn't fire you without using the letter E, you can keep your job.
Okay. I'm a good work guy.
You're fired.
But I didn't say...
You will. Click. Which, what if he didn't say that right there? I mean, wouldn't there be repercussions?
When you make the rules, you don't really have to follow the rules, I suppose. But he was correct either way. He knew it was coming. And Bart actually got a kick out of that, which is kind of mean when you think about Lenny is one of Homer's friends. I mean, he's not close with Lenny by any means, but he knows who Lenny is.
Oh, God, I just thought about that. Yeah, he knows Lenny.
Right. Like,
not
they've talked.
Lenny.
Lenny's been to his house before. I mean, he watched the fight on Bart's illegal cable.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and Bart's held that grudge against him ever since because he didn't get to watch it.
That's probably it.
This is called comeuppance, sir.
Well, with Bart enjoying this so much, Burns thinks, why don't we let you have a try at this? And they call in another employee being trailed or tricked into the office, really, by a donut being dragged across the floor.
Somebody got that trail of donuts out really fast, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give Mr. Burns, whoever's working for him on the donut department, top notch.
And why do they run out all the other days?
I hope they're getting a bulk deal, because you know they're keeping that donut factory in business.
Yeah, that Dunkin' Donut's doing really well.
I think it's just one genetically radioactive donut that they make smaller donuts off of.
Oh, God.
Self-reproducing genetically radioactive donut.
Kind of like the Queen Alien from Aliens, just
exactly
pushing them
nice.
out. Yeah.
Well, Homer actually gets all the way to Burns' office and then declares, hey, the trail of donuts ended. And then realizes his son is waiting for him there. Bart!
Homer.
And this is, of course, I'm thinking predetermined or set up in advance by Burns, but he doesn't play it that way.
What a coincidence. And a perfect opportunity to prove your loyalty. Go ahead, Bartholomew. You may fire when ready.
Ugh.
Hurry! Fire him now or I'll disown you. You'll lose everything. The fabulous toys, the lifetime of wealth and luxury, the gift certificate from Blockbuster Video. Great reference. The freedom to do whatever you want.
And we see Homer realizing that his fate is sealed. I mean, there's no way he can compete with a membership to Blockbuster Video and all that other cool stuff. And he actually says to Bart, I'll miss you, son. And then we see a close-up of Bart's face saying, I'm sorry, Dad, you're fired. But when we pan out, he's not looking at Homer. He's looking at Mr. Burns.
What? Fire me? That does it. You can never be my son.
A little to the left.
Oh.
Oh, very well. You can never be my...
Bart, of course, convinces him to do the exact same thing that Burns does everyone and step over his trapdoor. He pulls the lever, and I love Smithers here, who jumps in, sacrificing himself, trying to save Burns, and encouraging him to try to land on Leonard's carcass. Wow, that got even darker.
It's the delivery of that line, because Smithers says it so fast. He's like, sir, try to land on Leonard's carcass!
Also, knowing that Lenny is dead. He's just like, no,
that's the dark part. Yes, that's the part that is just like, whoa, because I think we always just assume that they're ending up in like a trash can or a lake or something, not dead. But that's a pretty definitive, pretty definitive choice to say.
They've
land
got
on
cameras
his
everywhere. They got a camera that's pointed down there so they can make sure the job is done. But good thing for them, everyone in Springfield's unbreakable. So.
And as far as the Simpsons reset goes, the job is pretty much done. We're back at the Simpsons home where the whole family is back, and Bart and Homer have seemingly, I guess, reconnected, or they're no longer, Burns is out of the picture, we'll say. Homer is talking to Bart, explaining, son, we weren't the ones talking bad about you. Those were just actors on TV.
How do you know?
Because one of them hung out with me for a week trying to get my character down.
Yeah, me too. That midget taught me a lot about his native Estonia.
And Marge goes on to explain that the point is, the real Simpsons family missed you a lot, and we're really glad you're home. Bart tells his family he loves them, and we're ready to end the episode, except Homer's not quite done. He says, right back at you, son. And now I want you to meet your new brother, Hans Moleman.
Cowabunga, dude.
I forgot about that.
And we fade to black as Homer is kissing on top of Hans Moleman's head and declaring, try it. It's like kissing a peanut.
And he's clearly yellow again.
And after the scene does in fact fade to black, we actually hear Marge say, Homer, I want that thing out of my house.
A thing. Not even
So
a
mean.
person.
I mean, that's
After
her
she-
new adopted
After she
son.
called him by name like a few scenes ago.
Though saying that thing does kind of go to the theory of they're just more like an invasive species than an individual person.
That rodent.
And they also taste like salt because Homer is a big fan of them.
Honey roasted mole man. Ingredients.
Peanuts. If only he had money so he could buy things, exchange it for goods and services like peanuts.
He'd much rather have 3 mole man and no monies.
Exactly.
Amen.
But that does bring us to the end of our episode, Burns Heir. Sean, is there anything else that you would like to point out from this episode before we get out of here?
No, I had this thought the 4 or 5 times I watched the episode before we did this. I kept thinking the episode wasn't that funny of an episode. It wasn't as wacky, but now talking about it, when you talk about it, it was a really funny episode. I think the problem was just before this episode, I remember listening to you guys talk about Homer the Vigilante, and that's such a funny episode. There's all these jokes one after the other. This one, the jokes are a little bit more spaced out. Because
that episode was a little more absurdist.
Definitely. And this one was a little bit more grounded. But now talking about, I'm like, this is a really funny episode with some dark undertones. It was
I
good.
think the dark humor in this one really made it stand out to me a lot more. Honestly, I as much as I enjoyed Homer the Vigilante, I think I might have enjoyed this one just a little bit more.
Now watching, I'm like, I can definitely see why this one is kind of highly regarded. Like, most people do remember this one. They'll bring up at least one joke from this episode.
Oh yeah,
Trying is the first step towards failure.
Exactly. That's like one of the most quoted things I see online, which I love that quote, so totally worth it.
Yeah, I say it all the time still.
To yourself.
Gotta remind myself.
Well, Richie, what about you or that book? Is there anything else you'd like to point out about Burns' Heir?
We touched on everything in my guidebook this week. I did want to point out that we missed the bit between the judge and Lionel Hutz, where Hutz was like, Judge, your shoe won't be ready until Thursday, which I like that since he was also a shoe repair guy. But other than that, I just wanted to say, I'm hoping that this is the point where Mole Man is now like a staple character where like he doesn't change skin colors anymore. And I know I bring it up all the time and it seems like I'm harking on it, but it's just, like with HD televisions and the ability to rewatch the episodes, these kind of things stand out now. Like when Lenny and Carl's voice aren't the right character. And it just kind of, for some reason, I can't get over that in certain regards. But other than that, the episode was very, very fun. Again, I said it at the beginning, it's a Burns episode. And on these rewatches, where I might not like the Burns episode so much when I was a kid, I absolutely love the Burns episodes as an adult. And it just, everything that he says cracks me up for the most part, especially the kick to Smithers. Like, that just made my freaking day. So thank you, Simpsons, for that.
Yes.
That's pretty much the only thing I have to say as well, is just I really enjoyed this episode. I expected to enjoy this episode. I have fond memories of watching it as a kid, but this episode is definitely one that has so many more layers as an adult that I never picked up on, never was in tune with before watching it this time. So another one that is absolutely worth rewatching as an adult. Highly recommend that you give this one a revisit, because it's a surprising episode in the sense that I remembered it being good. It probably was even better than I expected.
Amen. 100%. Yeah, this was a rewatch, definitely. If you're a fan of The Simpsons, it's a one you should pay a little bit more attention to because there are some great gags in it.
Absolutely. And arguably the best gag got removed, and we'll be talking about when we get to the 138th episode, Spectacular. But we're not quite there yet. For now, I just want to say thank you so much to our guest Sean from the Writer's Bone podcast for joining us today to talk about this fantastic episode. Sean, go ahead and tell everybody about where they can find you and they can find the Writer's Bone podcast online. And get all your plugs in. Talk about Daniel's book and all that other good stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. No, thanks for having me. This is a great podcast. As a fan of podcasts, I dig it because it talks about something I love, but it's also great when you hear two people who share a passion and also are informed. It's always the best. I love the podcast. If you want a break and you want something that's not as informed, go over to writersbone.com. Check out one of our 300 episodes. If you want to send us some hate messages, you can get us at writersbone on Twitter, facebook.com/writersbone, and Instagram, which I've been told is very nice, at writersbone as well. If you are interested in reading a new book, I highly recommend Dan Ford's debut novel, Sid Sanford Lives. It's available now. It's a great book. It will keep you enthralled. My girlfriend read it in less than 24 hours. She just stayed and read the whole thing and loved it. So highly recommend it. And if you want to send me hate mail about the monkeys, I'm at Sean Tuohy, Tuohy 2.
Very cool. Love. Thank you again so much for coming on, man. It was an absolute blast talking with you. It's always nice to hear other people's perspective, and clearly you're a huge fan of the show, so it's a lot of fun just getting to nerd out with a fellow nerd. Agreed.
Thank you, guys. I needed this. I need to let this nerdism out of me because it was building up, and I need to spray it.
Yeah, you've got to release the tension once in a while, buddy.
Yeah, ruin some
Speaking of
X in the house.
So, Richie, why don't you go ahead and release that tension and let everybody know where they can find you online?
All right, give me about 5 minutes. Oh, the other tension. Okay. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWiz_kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. You can also follow us on Instagram, and you can follow our YouTube channels as well. Right now, I am doing Wrestling theWizKid on our YouTube channel. We're going through some technical difficulties for the first couple episodes, but we're getting there. But please stay tuned for that and try to make me a wrestling fan. It's not going to work.
As for me, I am at MrMostDaysOff. That works pretty much everywhere. And other than that, just want to say thank you again so much for tuning in and joining us on this journey down the classic, at this point, golden age of The Simpsons. We appreciate you tuning in and going on this journey with us each week. Richie and I look forward to being back with you again next week. And, Richie, did you see what episode number we're going to be on next week?
I'm going to assume either like 99 or 101.
You know, you were close, real damn close. It's the 100th episode of the series, Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass song. And
There's nothing that can make that even better. There's no way that could get any better.
It just couldn't, could it? But it is. It's going to get so much sweeter because we've got another great guest coming back. It's Simpsons writer Michael Price back to talk more about F is for Family, The Simpsons, and maybe a new project that just got announced. Woohoo!
Ooh.
So make sure you tune in for that next week.
And until then, make sure you stay away from the Booger Man.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Rising from the depths of a state called Michigan, two inebriated dorks prepare their plan for intergalactic domination. Mixing their extensive knowledge of geek culture with their insatiable thirst for alcohol, these two man-children bring you a show like you've never heard before. They will tell you tales from faraway lands and have you questioning their taste in beer. But make no mistake, friend, for the best coverage of your favorite comics, films, and TV shows, there's no better source for you to get your fix So listen up, strap in, and prepare yourself as Jake and Tom conquer the world.